Hello, my name is Annie Rigby. I am Artistic Director of Unfolding Theatre. I am a white woman with ginger hair, wearing a yellow t-shirt, sitting in a blue bedroom. And welcome to this roundup of the second ever Northeast Culture Social, which took place on the 11th of June. This is just designed to be a little catch up for people who couldn't make it. There were about 80 people who attended, but I know there were lots of people who couldn't be there, and also people who just don't get on with Zoom. So we thought this would be a really nice way to share some of the conversations and what was part of the event with a wider audience. And to help me do that, I am joined by some of the people who helped organise the event. So they are now going to introduce themselves.
So, hello, I'm Cinzia Hardy. I'm the Artistic Director of November Club, and it was great to be involved with this. I'm a white woman with hair that could do with a haircut, and I'm sitting in my home in Northumberland. And my theme that I chaired in our breakout group was called Thinking About Change.
Thank you, Cinzia. And over to Ellie.
Hello, I'm Ellie Turner. I'm the Exec Director of Open Clasp Theatre Company. I am a white woman. I'm wearing a blue top. I'm sitting in my home office, and I have done my lockdown own fringe cut. I chaired the group, which was Rooms and Zooms. What does being a venue or festival mean now, and what do you want it to mean in the future?
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ellie. And now we're going to go over to Rob to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Rob Huggins. I'm the Chief Executive of Liberdagi and Gosforth Civic Theatre. I'm a tall, bald, white man with a salt and pepper beard, wearing a long sleeve greeny blue t-shirt, sat in a 13-year-old's bedroom. I chaired the room which was called Who's in the Room? How can the Northeast art sector be more inclusive, not less, coming out of this crisis?
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So to share a little bit about how the event began. So the idea of Northeast Culture Social, it came out of a conversation between people at theatre organisations based in the Northeast, both big organisations and small organisations, but thinking about how do we make space for the wider community to come together. So freelancers, furloughed staff, makers and doers, the kinds of conversations you might have before a show, after a workshop, passing by somebody in a foyer somewhere or in a theatre bar somewhere. How do we make space for those conversations? And it's been really, really beautiful to be able to find those moments of connection. And what's also really lovely about Northeast Culture Social is it doesn't have a fixed pattern. It's not the same every time. And one of the things that happened after the first Northeast Culture Social is someone got in touch and made the suggestion that it would be really nice to share some work by artists, to share creative responses to what's going on right now as part of this event. So this Northeast Culture Social kicked off with 5 really beautiful sharings of work by 6 artists actually, sharing 5 pieces, which was really, really beautiful. The event took place on the 11th of June, which was really in the first few weeks following the killing of George Floyd in America and the Black Lives Matter protests. And Amy Golding kicked off the event by inviting us all to make our own mark as part of that protest. Before we moved into the sharing by the 5 artists, so we had some beautiful work shared by Hannabiell Sanders, who was accompanied by Jalise from Ladies of the Midnight Blue. We had Melody Sproates sharing their brilliant zine, Stay Home, Stay Queer. We had Geronimo and Curious Monkey sharing work from their production Here. We had Wambui Hardcastle sharing her piece Mayonnaise Girl, which was made with Northern Stage Young Company. And finally, we had Bex Bowsher sharing a brand new poem that she'd written about her wrestles with creativity during lockdown. And once that got us all thinking, the conversation sprang from there. So I'm going to share now a little bit of a glimpse of their work so you can enjoy it too.
Roll of thunder, hear my cry over water by and by. Old man coming down the line, whip in hand to beat me down. But I ain't gonna let him turn me around.
Stay Home, Stay Queer, which is my new creative arts project aimed at providing positive free resources for young queer people who are currently isolated in unaccepting homes. The first part of the project is The Scene, which is a free print-at-home PDF help pack. It's got loads of activities in bright, bold, beautiful colours, and it's free to download on the Curious Arts website.
When I Don't Art, a poem by Bowsher. It's like my hands won't rest. They move from place to place, carrying with them my mind. I become like the house cat who, when stressed, shreds and tears at itself, hoping to find a release to the instruction: do, make, create. I cannot rest or sit. My heart pounds, pounds, sitting at once too small to pump to my extremities, yet too large to be contained by my chest, stomach, throat. My arms reach out to my absent family, the chosen few of early drafts and late night last minute making. The stories blossom from our mouths over wine and texts and forgotten remembering of art gone wrong.
Pauline is the character I play in the show. My name is Pauline. That's it so far. My in-between name, English name, Geordie, granny name. When I first moved here, my mom gave me wrong for speaking Portuguese. So Paulina became Pauline. Speak English, girl. Be English, girl. But now she's in love with Angola again. And it's not even Portuguese she is learning. She's learning Kimbundo of the internet. And she says, "Tua jimbeco, koso ki tua tundo." And I'm like, what? You're a wise old African woman or what? Where I, man?
I was born mayonnaise. I mean, you wouldn't be able to spread me between two slices of bread, but you're welcome to try. In GCSE chemistry textbooks, mayonnaise is used as a standard example of emulsion. You mix two things together until they're perfectly blended, fused. But look closer. The particles, they're just finely dispersed. It's an illusion of perfection. And I understood mayonnaise. Look closely and you can still see those two distinct parts, those two hemispheres dispersed in and beneath my skin clashing. Perhaps you could distill me, release those two people trapped, one with the blonde hair and the blue eyes that shine on my father's side of the tree, and another with even tighter black ringlets, my mother's mother tongue nestled comfortably in her mouth.
I hope you enjoyed that glimpse as much as we did. We're now going to hear from our conversations that took place. So first of all, we're going to head over to Cinzia, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the conversation she was part of.
So we started by discussing thinking about change, very, very broad subject for our circumstances and time at the moment. We were a small group of 8, which was lovely, and I was supported by Tilly Riley in making some notes and making sure the session ran well. In terms of thinking about change, we talked a little bit about transformation right across our arts and cultural sector, what that might look like, and whether needing to change how we do what we do, where we do what we do and how we do it. So a sense of reframing what we're doing as we wait for some sort of normal to return. That took us to a conversation around digital, how we are adapting to digital ways of thinking about our work. Some of us not wanting at all to even consider that. And then around that, we also talked about a sort of a digital fatigue that's kicking in right now. We had a very positive voice in our room that suggested it now was the time to kind of get up to date with all the things we don't know how to do, which also includes digital technology, so that we've got a bank of resources that are available to us as new skills once we get back into some sense of normality. But one of the key issues we sort of ended our session on was how can creators make money out of all of this? Because at the moment it's proving quite difficult to think about how you can actually offer digital content for a payment. So that's sort of where we got to. Lots more to talk about.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Cinzia. And of course, yeah, loads more to talk about indeed. I'm now going to hand over to Ellie, who's going to tell us a bit about the conversation that she was part of.
Yes, so ours was rooms and Zooms. So we had lots of conversations. We were looking at venues and festivals, what they mean now and what they might look like in the future. We talked a lot about digital as well, following on from the last one. We talked about locality as well, about how a lot of the work we've been doing at the minute has been very much about the audiences and the work and the groups that are right on organisations' doorsteps, and how that's made all of us think very locally about what we're making and who we're making it for. We talked a lot about this blended model of digital and space-based and what that is coming out to look like, and what is reimagining as we come out of the lockdown, what it might look like. There were 6 of us, and everybody was pleased that funders have been very supportive. And as especially festivals were thinking about restructuring things and moving online, they found funders very supportive. But we talked about how we are aware that access to Wi-Fi is an issue in many areas, and that digital question isn't really answered yet by anybody. We talked a bit about the example of Hull and how they've been using smart TV and local television stations to put content out and digital work out. We talked a lot about the frustrations of digital and the lack of being able to bring people together. So just missing the fact that you bring people together into spaces, and how people have found difficulties with technology. We also talked about the challenges for theatre, particularly translating into new media and formats. It doesn't always work successfully. And what we do when it doesn't, when it fails, what then should we do as creators and makers? Unfolding theatre were telling us about the best in the world and how it's been screened to online audiences through social media takeover at East Durham Creatives, and they were talking a lot about the audiences that they've now built and the really positive relationships they've built, and how they might be able to keep that going beyond lockdown, and what that looks like. And I think everybody in the room was saying the same thing. How do we keep those connections going? And we talked a bit about lessons learned from a comedy club who've been doing their stuff online, how they found that segments that they would usually do in real space over half an hour, they've kind of brought down to 6 minutes. So kind of reacting to what audiences want and what they're able to take. And also their lessons of finding out that actually young creators and young artists were doing far better in this space than maybe people who have done it for a long time or are more used to space. So have we got something to learn from younger creators and makers? And then we had a great conversation about the accessibility that's been available through work that's being put online. So disabled artists through lockdown and work they've been doing. And there, a group there was telling us about the work that they normally do in a space they've been doing through Zoom at home, and how that's involved other members of the family who had never seen what they've been working on before. So ending on a really positive story.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's great to hear, Ellie. Thank you so much. Right, we're now going to head over to Rob, who's going to tell us a little bit about his conversation.
Hi, thanks, Annie. My room was entitled "Who's in the Room? How can the North East arts sector be more inclusive, not less, coming out of this crisis?" And the first thing that we sort of talked about, we decided to rephrase the title of the room slightly to "Who should be in the room?" And we talked obviously a lot about the Black Lives Matter movement after the tragedy of George Floyd. But also we talked about disability arts and the disability arts sector, which was well represented within the group of people that were in this discussion. And really these are ongoing reflections, thoughts, conversations, debates, arguments that have been going on for decades and a lot more. And really what came out of that was two things. So the first thing was that both lockdown and the Black Lives Matter movement had made the large majority of people in the room kind of re-look at themselves, re-look at their own practice, re-look at their own thoughts, their beliefs, their who they are, how they reacted to certain things. And I know for me personally, that was very much where I found myself at that particular instance of the meeting. I was very much thinking about, my own organisation and myself as a human being, and how I was thinking about the world at that particular time. And the second thing was about, how this is at the forefront of our thoughts at the minute, but how do we keep it going? So how do we keep it at the forefront of our thoughts? What can we do within our own practice, our own organizations, within ourselves to keep questioning what we're doing, decisions we're making? I felt as a privileged middle-aged white man, straight man, that it was ironic that I was chairing this particular discussion, but I think that's actually often the case, and so how do we ensure that that's not the case going forwards, and that's not what happens? But really, this is a huge ongoing societal issue. From Liberdagi's point of view, my organisations, obviously we look at it largely from disability arts, from kind of including people with learning disabilities, but now, because obviously we're building based, that becomes sort of community focused as well. We didn't really come to any conclusions. Lots of people shared from lots of different points of views and angles. They were all, absolutely right on. I left the meeting with a lot to think about, really, as I think a lot of people did. And I just hope that debate, those conversations continue. I know that I'm bringing those conversations to my organisations now, and I know that other organisations and other people are doing the same thing. So time will tell, but let's keep that on the agenda. And I think it's definitely something that we should just keep bringing back at North East Social, just to see what steps are being taken.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that, Rob. And yeah, definitely. I'm going to say more in a moment about that thing of keeping conversations going. I'm just going to say a few words about a conversation that I wasn't part of, but have been sent notes for, which was chaired by Phil Douglas from Curious and from Dance City, and Elsie Doyle, who was looking after note taking, has sent me a bit about the conversation that was had there. So this conversation about climate change, one really strong point that was made is about reframing that, about it's a climate crisis, it's not a change. And there was a conversation about the number of refugees and people who've lost their lives as a result of climate change, and how we start talking about it and thinking about it. And then there was that sense, I mean, it's interesting hearing from you, Rob, but similarly that sense of we're in this period of real change, and out of this period of change, is it possible to reimagine how we work, to think about impact on climate? There was a conversation about the concept of slow touring. So how do we really invest in the time we're spending in places rather than constantly moving from one place to another, and being quite burdensome in terms of travel impacts on the climate. And thinking also about, through the concept of slow touring, what does that mean in terms of the relationships that we can build as artists and as organisations? Somebody raised the question, what does it look like if the journey to get places is part of the performance too? So some really beautiful imaginations, and a real sense, similar to some of these other conversations we've heard about, how do we sustain action during this time. There was also another conversation group that Amy Golding chaired, which was about creativity and creative processes during lockdown. And Amy couldn't join us this afternoon, but I'm now going to hand over to her for her handily pre-recorded moment where she shares her summing up of that section. So over to you, Amy.
Hi everybody, I'm Amy Golding. I'm Artistic Director of Curious Monkey. I'm a small white woman with red curly hair, currently wearing glasses, a lip ring and a leopard print jumper. So I was in the group that was about creating during lockdown, and we had a bit of a discussion about some resources that are out there. So somebody was talking about an app called Padlet, which is a way of collaborating with other people that you can put kind of pictures and notes and all sorts of things in one place. Also talking about some organisations that had resources out there, like Collective Encounter, that has a library of kind of online games and things that work within workshop situations on Zoom or online. Also someone I think mentioned the Citizens Theatre in Glasgow has some resources. So we're just kind of talking about things that we could share. Also we were talking about ways of creating that aren't about the digital, and about theatre in windows, creating pulley systems between buildings, stuff that one of the people in the group have been doing, or was planning around working with older people in care homes and how to connect with them through windows. Someone was talking about quizzes that they run where they go and hide things in people's gardens or behind their cars. So just thinking about the kind of treasure trail, scavenger hunt kind of element of creating at the moment, and that being very local around your house and around the space that you live. Also, there was a couple of events that were talked about that have been local events that have been really well received. So there was the Curious Monkey doing here, and also there was Born Lippy did their first online performance, which had live poets and comedians and all of that, and they were experimenting with how to kind of warm up the crowd and all of that, but doing that via Zoom, which I think went down really well. That's it from me. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Amy. That was brilliant, by the magic of editing. So just to share a few things about the plan for the next North East Culture Social. So we are planning to hold another one, and it will probably be sometime in the late summer. So we'll keep you posted with dates. And the themes that have really come out, our plan for that next North East Culture Social is about making it all about you, about making much more time for conversation within the event, because the events have been so brilliant at bringing a big community together, and to share some voices that have shared really beautiful insight and thought. And it's always felt like we want to make as much space as possible for that, but then we run out of time to really get deep into the conversations we want to have. So the next event really plans to take it slow and return to some of these themes that we've started exploring and go deeper in them. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Cinzia and Ellie and Rob and Phil and Amy, and also to Caroline Ryan, who is BSL interpreting this roundup. I'd like to say thank you to all the other people who helped make the event happen, and everyone who came along and shared their thoughts. And look after yourselves, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.